Good morning. You're tuned in to another walk in the woods with Steph. Now this is take 2 of the video. I did one last night and I found that I was too specific in identifying groups. I found that I was too specific, so I'm taking it over today. I'm redoing it, and what I'm doing here presently with you is taking a sociological look at mankind, at humanity. A sociological look and analyzing the attitude of what I call, in parenthesis, we're right and they're wrong. So I'm examining that attitude, the attitude that I've named, in parenthesis, we're right and they're wrong. So it is an attitude that permeates all of mankind. Okay, it's been going on for a long time. Historically, it's been going on as far as history can be recorded, and it was going on before that too. Even in prehistoric times, we have evidence that it was going on then too. By the archaeological finds that we've dug up, we can see that humanity, even back then, mankind, was permeated by that attitude. Okay, now what I want to do today, I don't want to name any specific groups. That's why I'm redoing it. I want to take a good look at humanity, at mankind in general. That's what I want to do. I don't want to point fingers at any specific group, any specific religion, any specific nation, any specific political system, any specific philosophy, any specific ideology. But I want to look at them in a general way, in a sociological way. Also, I will look at it in a philosophical way. Okay? I've been on this earth for more than 5.5 decades now. I'm headed towards my 6th complete decade of existence on this earth. So I've had time to see things. There are people that are older than I am. We all know that. And there are people that are younger than I am. But many people become aware of things as they age. Some people earlier than others. Some people earlier than others. Okay? I started seeing things a bit clearer when I was about 45 years old. So about 11 years ago, I started seeing things a bit clearer than I did before, sorry. Started seeing things differently and in a clearer manner, but it took me time. Took me time to get to where I am now, and I'm probably going to look at things differently. I will probably look at things differently in the future, you know, but I'll tell you where I am now, and I'll tell you what I think. And I think that a lot of people think this. I think that a lot of human beings think this. First of all, I'm going to do what we call in French une constatation. Okay, in English it would be an assessment in awareness. And constatation in French is more than just an assessment. It's an assessment in awareness, where you see facts and you assess these facts and you're aware. Okay, you might say, well, Steph, you think you're aware. Well, I have a certain awareness. There's some people who are more aware than I am. There's some people that are less, and some people are about the same place that I am, but that's besides the point. The awareness that I have is there in my mind, and you can be more aware than I am, and many of you probably are more aware than I am. But I'll share with you what I see. What do I see about mankind? What do I see about where humanity is going? Where it's been, where it is, and where it's going. And like I said, I will try the best that I can not to name any specific groups. Okay, so let's get started. So humanity is permeated by the we're right, they're wrong attitude. Okay, the we're right, they're wrong attitude. Okay, so without pointing any fingers, I will tell you generally where these things come from. First of all, they come from our upbringing, the way we're brought up, what culture we live in, where our family comes from. All right, what nation we're in, what nation does that culture have, what religion we're in, okay, in any given place. All right, what philosophy we adhere to, what ideology do we adhere to, what is our political ideology? That's one example. What is our philosophical ideology? What is our religious ideology? What is our national identity? Okay, so you put all these things into account. All right, the education that a human being receives. The education that a human being receives from his or her surroundings, and the formation of the mind, that looks at the exterior world and what environment it's in and what that environment tells it. Okay, so the human mind, as it grows up, gets shapes itself, but also gets shaped by everyone around it. Okay, so there's other human minds around us who share a common family bond with us, share a common culture with us, share a common nationality with us, and sometimes it's a multi-ethnic background too. Okay, so all right, share a certain religion with us, share a certain philosophy, certain ideology, political standing. Where do we stand politically? Okay, that's another thing. Okay, so where do we stand politically? Okay. Also, economic systems. There's economic systems. That's right. Usually they're linked to the political system. Often the economic system will be linked to the political system that a person will adhere to. Okay, so politically, you can have this or that ideology, and oftentimes your economic view will be tied into what political view you have. Okay, that's often the way it works. Okay, that's often the way it works. So when you have a certain philosophy of life, a worldview, your worldview will be based on where you come from, what nation you live in, your family background, your religion, your political ideology. All right? Your economical ideology. Okay? What politics and what economic system do you adhere to? What religious belief system do you adhere to? You know, what religious belief system do you adhere to? What politics do you adhere to? What economical system do you adhere to? What nation are you part of? And if you're in a multi-ethnic place, what do you share in common with other ethnicities that live with you? Do you agree with them? Or do you fight with them? Okay? Alright? So there you go. So that's the formation of a human being. Okay, the sociological look at mankind by all of these specific qualifications that I just mentioned. Okay? I'm sorry if I blunder sometimes when I speak, because sometimes I get ahead of myself. It makes me blunder when I talk. I'm sorry about that. But anyway, I always try to repeat properly after. Okay? Alright, so to get back to what we were talking about, we have all of these principles that form the mentality of a human being, of mankind in general, because we all grow up in places and that have different aspects of these things, different ways of seeing these things, different ways of understanding these things. Okay, so then what happens is, if you see someone different, how do you react? How do you react? You see someone who's really different than you, someone who's really different than you are, that can come from another country or even from your own, but that thinks really differently from you. How will you react? Will you be tolerant and accepting? Or will you be in the attitude of, we're right, they're wrong? Will you be in that attitude? And I can tell you that the way things are going now, the we're right, they're wrong attitude is prevalent in the world. It's prevalent. Okay? There's 2 major wars going on. There's a third one that's about to start, the way things are going. And I won't name them. I don't want to name anything. I just want to take a general look at mankind here. But there's 2 major wars going on. There's a third one that may start at any moment. You know where they are. And there's other lingering wars that have been going on for years in many places on the globe. Okay? And the mentality is, we're right and they're wrong. That's what it all boils down to. That's what it all boils down to. The we're right, they're wrong attitude. And you might say, well, you know, some wars have been necessary in history, you know, because there were movements that were very destructive and they had to be stopped. And I have to agree with that. I don't necessarily like thinking about that. I don't like thinking about it, but yes, there were movements. I won't name them, but we know what they are. You know, most people know what they were. There are movements that had to be stopped. They had to be destroyed because they were destroying everybody around them. So they had to be destroyed. Like I said, I don't like talking about these things. I wish we could do it another way. That's why I'm talking to you here. Because I find that we're headed towards another major conflict. We're headed towards another major conflict because people in high places and people who follow them have the we're right their wrong attitude. Okay? That's what it all boils down to. And you might say, well, yeah, we are right. And they are wrong. Well, that's a very ambivalent situation for me. And you know, throughout my lifetime, I must admit, I've had that attitude. Still have it sometimes too. Depending on what we're talking about, it can still happen to me to have that attitude. I'm trying to get rid of it. I'm trying to see things in a global way, in the sense that I'm trying to understand why people can't tolerate each other. I'm trying to find solutions to that. In my own mind, at least. You know, at least if I change my heart, you know, I might be able to help other people on this planet, on this place we call Earth, that we call home. I might be able to help other people on this planet to do so, to strive towards peace. Okay. Well, you might say, well, religion gave us the solution for peace. Yes, it did. Yes, it did. I won't name any specific ones, like I said, because I'm speaking in general to humanity. But yes, many religions do give you a solution for peace. Okay? But many men and women in the past, and still today, use religion for war, because they tell other people we're right and you're wrong. So they have the we're right, they're wrong attitude, and they look straight in the eye of other people and they'll say we're right and you're wrong. Okay? When basically the message of the religion is a message of peace. And you might say, why do you use that word? And I know people that I know that are going to tell me that. I'm using it in a practical sense here so I can get through this video, because if I start explaining the differences between religions here, it's going to be problematic. This video will never end. Let's just say that in general, religions have a message of peace. Okay? Just say that. Okay? Let's just understand it that way. You might say, well, why don't you mention ours? People who adhere to the same religion as I do might say, well, why don't you mention ours? It's the ultimate solution. Yes, I think so. But still, other people think that their religion is the ultimate solution too. Okay, so I'm trying to be fair here. You might say, well, you don't need to be fair. Well, I want to be fair. Because you know what? We're on the same ship together, all of us. And the way we use it sometimes, religion, that is, in parentheses. And like I said, I'm using that word to be practical here, to be understood quickly. The way we use it, religion, we often use it to wage war. Historically, we've seen it. It's been going on for centuries. Okay, when we should be using it to strive for peace. Because basically, the central message of every religion is a peaceful one. In general, okay? You might come up with objections about this, but in general, the message, the central message of a religion, in general, is a peaceful message. Okay, so we're going to move on. And that's what we should use religion for peace. And to love each other in the transmission of the said religion, or religions in the plural. Okay? Alright, let's move on. Political systems, and I know that I made videos lately about, you know, where I wonder this is all going politically. And if we're going to have a central world government, we'll see. We'll see. I could be wrong. Okay? But the ones that are existent now, let's look at that. Okay? And like I said, I won't point any fingers. I won't name any names. But there are countries that lead this world. There are countries that have to follow the lead of the bigger political entities that exist. Okay, now we can call them, should call them nation states with political systems. So as religion has its belief system, well, politics have political systems. We all know that. You know, I'm sure you already knew that. I'm not teaching anything new, but they often blend in with each other. They often do, okay? Now, just a little parenthesis here. There are some people who are irreligious. That means they don't have a religion, okay? Just want to mention that. And sometimes they can also have the same attitude. Many of them do. The we're right, you're wrong attitude. Just as religious people can have. Okay? We're going to get back into politics now. I had to say that before I forgot it. Get back into politics. Okay? We got to get back into politics. Political systems. Nation states. Some states are bigger, more powerful, have influential political systems, and they want to influence the whole world with their way of thinking, their way of doing things, their economic system. They want that to have supremacy over the other nations. Now, there are big nations we could name. We know them. Don't have to do that, like I said. And there are nations that have a smaller size and a smaller influence in the world. Okay? But that follow the big ones, and some mid-sized nations too, who, you know, they have an influence. They have a cultural and political influence. But they have to, you know, pick sides and what big guy they're going to follow, what big nation state they're going to follow. And so there's alliances that form, political and economical alliances that form between nation states. And they have their way of seeing how the world should work politically and economically, while the other alliance, or alliances in the plural, has or have different ways of seeing it. And then again comes in the we're right, you're wrong attitude. Okay? We're right, and they're wrong. Okay, so you'll say, well, yeah, for my political system, I believe that we're right, and that the rest of these things that appear before us as political and, you know, economic systems, I think that they're wrong. I think that we have the right solution, we have the right recipe politically, we have the right recipe economically, and so we're right, and all the rest of them are wrong. Okay? Again, we see it. Alright? Now, there's also another thing that I almost forgot to mention about all this, is that there is something called need. Need. Ever since the tribal times, people had needs. Stay alive. Okay, so as we developed into bigger tribes and bigger nations, okay, with systems of thought, well then, the needs grew exponentially, okay, and then we became more civilized with more goods available, so we got to keep up with the civilizational standards of more comfortable living that we had before, and to do that we need resources, and we go take the resources where we can. And if the resources in your country, or in my country, or in an allied country with us, not too much of a problem. Not too much of a problem usually, but if it's another country, in another country, that's not necessarily inside the alliance that we have with other nations, and those who are there don't necessarily want to share it, or even if they do sometimes, well, people from a given alliance will go in and plunder the resources to the detriment of the local populations. And then if the local populations complain, well, we're going to say, well, people would say that are in the stronger camp, they would say, well, these people have a lower living standard than we do. They're more primitive, and we have a higher living standard. We need these things to make our civilization function. And we go there, and we're allowed to go there, and we're allowed to take. But oftentimes we don't give the locals their fair share when we do that. And I'm not just talking about my side of the world here. I'm talking about how humanity works. It's been like this throughout history. Even people were slaughtered because they had resources that a stronger power wanted, and they went in there and they just slaughtered all of them to take it. Or they put them into servitude, made vassals out of them, and took the resources and put the locals into servitude. Now, depending on the regimes throughout history, some of them were more sympathetic to the locals than others. Some of them were nice to the locals, actually. Once they'd put them into servitude, they were gracious to them, respected their culture, but others were more violent and destroyed what these people had, okay, and what they were, who they were, what they were, killed many of them, sometimes even most of them, and either took the land or took the resources. Like I said, some other powers throughout history have been gracious once they put other people under their rule. Depends. And then sometimes these people become free again under the rule of the one who invaded them. Then some people will become free again with time and gain full respect, and then there's more harmony. Okay, that happens too. That happens too. Some systems are more gracious than others in the way they do things. Okay, depending on what and who, what they are, the way they're run, and what the ideology is. Okay, all right. So basically, there's need, and then there's greed. Well, that goes beyond need. Okay, so there's need. You can understand that, but sometimes there's greed, and that's where it becomes really problematic, and that's where the excuses come out even more of the we're right, they're wrong. Okay, if you look at the history of economics and politics and wars and plundering of resources, a lot of propaganda has been used to denigrate the people who lived on the land before the new ruler came along. Okay? Plunder the resources so that they can have the goods. Alright? Alright? And like I said, with time, depending on the ruler, even in a greedy situation, it can happen even then, that if the system is gracious enough, it will free the vassals in servitude. So it will make them entirely accepted citizens of their rule, their empire. Okay, because often it's empires that act that way. And we know of historical empires that have done so, that have been gracious with time to those that they were ruling over. Okay? Alright? But where does this lead all of us now? Where are we now? We seem to be in a time where we're headed towards a civilizational shift. What do I mean by that? Well, the we're right, they're wrong attitude is prevalent, as I said before, because at some times in history there was more acceptance between people of their differences. Sometimes in history it was able to happen. Sometimes it was just unthinkable because it was just like a total attitude of domination that either side wanted over the other. Sometimes it's either sides in the plural. Sometimes it's two sides. Sometimes it's multiple sides. Anyway, the attitude of total domination. Well, I find that we're in a time like that now. We're in a time like that now. I find that there are some people that are trying to use very efficiently the we're right, they're wrong attitude to take over the world, to have dominion over the world. Okay, to have dominion over the world. Okay, for those of you who aren't familiar with that, to have dominion over the world is to rule it. To rule the world with your way of thinking or my way of thinking, see it how you want it, but with a particular way of thinking formed by all the factors we talked about before. Politics, economics, religion, ideology. Ideology and all of the three I just mentioned before. Philosophical ideology also. Oh yes. Oh yes. I'm going to get to that in a minute. Philosophical ideology also. Because all of us have a philosophy. You might say, well, I don't study that. Well, you have a philosophy. It's deeply entrenched in your ideology. You have a philosophy of life. It's called a worldview. It's called a worldview. So you have a philosophy of life. You have an ideology of how things should be. And again, that's where, and I have that too. Hey, by the way, don't think that I'm excluding myself. I include myself fully in what I'm saying here. I'm a human being like all the rest of us, and I include myself fully in what I'm saying here. So we all have ideologies. We all have a philosophical and ideological system. Sorry about the blunder, like I told you. I'm nervous sometimes when I do these videos, okay? So we all have a philosophical / ideological way of thinking, which is called a worldview, which includes all of the formation of the mind and how it sees the rest of the world around it. Okay, we have that individually and we have that collectively. Now, even in a collectivity, sometimes we don't always see, and sometimes we don't always see things 100% the same, even if we're part of a collectivity or a community. I'll give you an example. I had stressed this a lot yesterday in the video that I did, but I found it was too specific. But I'll give you an example. If you go to the place where you practice your religion, do you always agree 100% with the person in front leading the assembly? I'm going to ask you this question again. If you go where you practice your religion, do you always agree 100% with the person in front on that stage that's leading your assembly? That's one thing. Okay? If you're studying philosophy in a classroom and the teacher up there is the same as you are collectively, he's part of the same ethnic group as you are, he basically got a very similar education, but he has a PhD, but he's teaching you, but he has a pretty similar education to you, and he brings you philosophy. Do you always agree 100% with what he says, or what she says? Do we always agree with him? Well, I can tell you by personal experience, I don't always agree with those up on a stage teaching us. I agree up to a certain point, and sometimes, some days I could agree 100% with them. It can happen. It can happen. Well, I will agree. We'll agree 100% with the person on the stage teaching us. Whether it be religion, whether it be philosophy, whether it be politics. It can happen that I will agree 100%. But there are other days when I'm going to agree maybe at 80% with them, and there'll be a 20% problem, in parenthesis. With what they say, in my mind, I'll see a problem. Okay? Ideologically, I see a problem. Okay? Philosophically, I'll see a problem. In religious thought, I can see a problem sometimes. I'll agree sometimes, 100%. Other times, oh, maybe 95%, maybe 80%. Same thing at school. Like I said, when your philosophy teacher tells you something, that can happen too. Your political science teacher, your economics teacher might tell you something comes from the same culture as you do, but you might have some disagreements with that person. He or she may say things that you will agree with, and he or she may say things that you will disagree with. Okay, then there's still a I'm right, you're wrong kind of attitude. So I'm right and that person's wrong. That shows up in my mind or in your mind. But it's to a lesser extent often than it is when we're looking at people from a different culture, a different background, a different ideology altogether, different worldview. Okay, and all the things we spoke of before. Often that's where the problems start that bring us to where we are today. So a different way of understanding reality. A different way of understanding reality that brings along that we're wrong. We're right. Sorry about that. We're right and they're wrong. But they're going to say that we're wrong and that they're right. That's what I was trying to get to here. I blundered because I was trying to get to that. Okay, so they're going to say that we're wrong and that they're right. And we're going to look right back at them and say that we're right and that they're wrong. I can look at them straight in the eye and say, well, we're right and you're wrong. And then they're going to look at me in the same fashion, in the same manner, and they're going to say the same thing to me. Yep. That's how it works. Okay? That's how it works. And then, well, if we can reach some type of agreement, we might be able to put it behind us. We might be able to say, well, you know what? We see things differently, but, I respect what you think. And you seem to respect what I think too. You've manifested that. So let's put it behind us and let's be friends. Let's work together. Let's cooperate. All right? For the betterment of people around us, for the well-being, our own well-being and the well-being of all those around us. Let's work together. Let's be friends. Let's cooperate. So instead of telling each other who's right and who's wrong, let's respect each other and our different views, and let's work together. And this brings me, I think, to my last subject for this video, because it's become long enough. I'm sorry for all the vocabulary blunders, but like I said, bear with me. I always find a way to correct that. Okay, so basically, the last thing I want to talk about is this. With all of these competing worldviews, and that's the verb, competing worldviews. So it's a competition. It's a competition. Okay? It's a competition. Now, I'm speaking historically here because it's been like that as long as we can see recorded history. And like I said, in prehistory, it seemed to be the same. Okay, but there was a need factor, and there still is. Okay, so we can't forget that, the need factor. But the competitive worldview factor. As long as we will compete with each other, as we will be competitive, that we will see it as a competition of who's better and who is going to be victorious over who, as long as we see it that way, and that our ego gets in the way, we will fight. We will fight, and we can see it coming. We can see a major conflict coming. There's 2 major wars going on. There's a third one that's about to start, it seems, at any moment. And there are other lingering wars that are parallel to those that have been going on for a long time. Okay? Been going on for a long time. And if we keep doing what we're doing, competing with each other, being competitive in the way we think, and the way we understand reality, and the way we want it to be, the way we want to shape it, instead of being cooperative about it. So if we're competitive instead of being cooperative, we will always be fighting each other, and there will be escalations. And I'm speaking here in a historical perspective. I'm not speaking in an eschatological perspective. Sorry about the blunder again. I'm not speaking here in an eschatological perspective. I'm not speaking in an eschatological perspective. I'm speaking in a historical perspective. A historical perspective. Okay? If we speak in an eschatological perspective, we will think that the end is near. If we speak in a historical perspective, we will think that time keeps moving on. And I think that actually right now, I'm better to speak in a historical perspective, because I don't want to coin any particular ideology over any other one. So we're going to keep speaking in historical perspective. Because if I speak eschatologically, I will coin an ideology over all the others. Okay, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that, and I don't think I should do that. So I'm speaking historically. Time keeps sliding from past, present to future, which some would say is an illusion. Okay, so that's we'd have to go into quantum physics to explain that, but we're going to look at it from what we can perceive with our eyes and our senses, okay? Our eyes and our nose, our mouth, our fingers, the touch, and what we can hear. Alright? So the 5 senses of the human mind, and what we can see, what we can read about time, about history, about where we've been, about where we are, and about where we're going. And I think, historically, we're plunging into something that's very dangerous with the technology that we have. We should be very careful, and cool heads will have to prevail, because the we're right and they're wrong attitude is prevalent right now, and we see how far it can bring the state of the world. We've seen it in history. We've seen what it can do. We've seen it in way far back history. We've seen it throughout the centuries, throughout the millennia, throughout the centuries. We've seen it even in more recent history in the 20th century. And now in the 21st century, we have weaponry that was invented in the 20th century, but that we've expanded upon, and that we've made even more dangerous than what it was at the beginning. And it was extremely destructive at first. It was extremely destructive. We can see historically what happened with that. Okay, and now we've expanded on that, made it even more destructive. Okay, we've expanded on that. We've made it even more destructive, and now we're competitive as ever. So we are extremely competitive instead of being cooperative. And the Society of Nations between World War I and World War II, and then the United Nations since then, well, I'll let you judge for yourself if that worked, if we were able to cooperate. We kept competing through these apparatus, or we cooperated? What do you think? I think you know the answer. I think you know the answer. I think you can see the state of the world right now. I think you can see where we're headed. I think you can see that. Some people put their heads in the sand and they say, oh, you know what? It'll be alright. Yeah, it will be alright eventually. I agree with that. There's always something good that will come after. But why do we have to go through these deep pits of history, call it like that, these deep holes in history, times that we should never have to go through. Why do we have to go through these things cyclically, repetitively, for good times to come after? Why is it like that? Why do we have to compete until we fight each other on a very large scale? On a very large scale. And now wars have become international. They've become global. Call them world wars. We seem to be headed for one now. Like I told you. So what are we going to do about that? Are we going to let it happen? Are we going to let the we're right and they're wrong attitude guide us all the way into destruction again? And with the weapons we have now, we can blow ourselves to smithereens. We can blow ourselves up. Okay? We can really blow this place up. Okay? And where would that bring us? How many would survive that? If any. Okay? Yep. So where does it lead us? The we're right, they're wrong attitude. And you look somebody in the eye and you tell them, I'm right, you're wrong. Where does that bring you? Does that bring you joy and satisfaction? Does it make you happy? Eh? There was a time where I found it was fun to play that game. Okay? To argue with people. To tell them what I thought was right and what they thought was wrong. I've done it. They call that a mea culpa in Latin, so I admit that I'm guilty of that. A mea culpa, they call it. I admit that I'm guilty of that. I've done it myself, okay? But I try to abstain from it now. I try to see what others think, try to understand them, try to understand why they think the way they think, what the factors are, why they come to the conclusions that they come to. And I can see that some of them even evolve through time, because I think we all do up to a certain point, depending on each individual and depending on each society. I think there are evolutions that happen in thinking patterns. Now, as soon as strong-headed people come back and claim that they're right and that everybody else is wrong, that's when these things start up again, even after times where there's sort of peace, because we have to mention it that way, even in times where it seems like it's peaceful. Well, people rise, and some of them want vengeance on what's happened before. Some of them it's different. Some of them it's just that they don't want to lose what they've got. They had power. They want to keep it. They want to re-blossom an empire that's basically finished, but they're giving it a last push. They're giving it a last push. They want to keep the influence and the power that they once had. They want to keep the influence and the power that they once had, and they want to work on that. They want to keep it. And sometimes it's strong-headed individuals who do that. Sometimes the people are fed up with it, but you get the strong-headed individuals who come in and who want to rule over their people and over many other people from different nations. Okay? That happens too. And then they'll come and the propaganda machine starts, and then they say, hey, remember folks, remember what it was like when we had influence. Remember what we told you, and we still think it today. We're right, and the rest of them we're fighting against are wrong. Okay? Alright? And sometimes also, not only the empires work that way, sometimes it's people who have been dominated too. When they come out of that domination, they come out of it with a vengeance. They come out of it and they say, you know what? There's been injustices in the past, and now we have the right to nationhood or to be recognized. And it's not moving fast enough. And we will fight the oppressor we will fight the oppressor. Even though the oppressor sometimes is almost gone or has given rights to the people back, the oppressor is still the oppressor in their minds, even if it happened a few generations ago or even centuries ago. I can tell you about that. I know how that works. Okay, I know how that works. Where I come from, I know how these things work. Okay, so even if it happened a few generations ago or centuries ago to the ancestors, some people will rise and they will radically want to change things by claiming that they're right and that their oppressor is wrong. Even though the oppressor might be long gone by then, like I said, in his power wheel that he had before. The oppressor might have given them rights where he has stopped being an oppressor. But that's still not enough for some people. They want more. So they want to rule over the oppressor. They want to rule over the oppressor, the one that they see as the oppressor. They want to rule over him, to get back at them, to trampoline their culture back to the forefront, and to get rid of the oppressor's culture, even though the oppressor may have brought certain benefits to them. Oh yes, that happens too. Even though the oppressor may have brought certain benefits to them, they want him out. Even though he's a softer guy than he was, and I'm calling it an individual, but we can talk about a whole political system, okay, or a nation that dominates another one, okay. So they want the oppressor, they want him out, they want that guy out, or they want to rule over him. Oh yeah, we're going to rule over this guy. He came in 300, 400 years ago, or he came in 80 years ago, or whatever it is. But now the oppressor, let's say the oppressor is a nicer guy than he was. Become nice, even have a beer with you, but you want to rule him. You want to rule over him. You want to get back at him. You want to put your culture into the forefront, and so he's wrong and you're right. Okay? So there you go. So as long as we'll be competitive, instead of cooperative, that our worldviews, sorry about the blunder again, that our worldviews will compete instead of cooperating. We could learn so much from each other. There's so much we can learn from each other. So much. But we just don't want to sometimes, because we don't like the belief system that the other guy has. It's different. It's wrong. We got to squash it. We got to denigrate it and squash it the best we can to wipe it off the face of the earth. Okay? All right? And then they'll tell you all the dirty things that these other people did, when even on their own side they've done dirty things too. Yeah, that happens. They'll say, well, you know, they did this, they did that. Well, often when our own side, or the side of the individual that feels he has to affirm himself, will have done things just as dirty as the other side he's pointing the finger to. Okay? Oh, they did this, they did that, they're brutal savages. Okay. But what did you do? What did you do? What did we do? Okay, what did we do collectively there? What did we do? Okay? What did you do? Whatever ideology you adhere to, or nation, state that you're part of, pointing the finger at the other ones. Whatever belief system you have, pointing the finger at the other ones, saying that they're dirty, that they've done brutal things. Well, oftentimes the systems that we're part of have done the same thing. Take a look at history. Oftentimes people who point the finger at other people have done the same thing. Okay? Or things that are similar. Things that are similar in the great competition for dominance. Okay? The great competition for dominance. Okay? So, how does that make you feel? How does that make me feel to realize that we often want to compete against each other? We want to dominate how people think. We want them to think the way we do. We want them to be culturally the same as we are. That we want them to have the same belief system as we have in everything. That's what we want. We seem to be wired that way, but when are we going to get past that? Again, speaking in historical terms, there are eschatological solutions. I know that there are eschatological solutions. I know that religion offers eschatological solutions to this problem. I know it. I'll repeat that. Religion does offer eschatological solutions to these problems. But we're still in history right now. So we need to look at historical ways that people have made peace. Because some people were able to do it in the past, and we can still do it now before we blow ourselves up to smithereens. And I believe the way to do it is cooperation instead of competition. Believing we can get along. Sitting down, having a dialogue, speaking with people, speaking with each other, respecting each other. But there has to be goodwill on either side. On every side, there has to be goodwill for this to happen. Are we up to it? Are we, mankind in the 21st century, up to that? The humanity that's been around for so long on this earth, are we up to that now? Or are we going to go into another cycle of destruction before things get better? Before things get good again, in parenthesis. Before the good times come along again. And we can see good times in every time, because there's always good people who live. Always good people there, in any time period. There will always be good people. Okay? Good intentioned, good-willed people. Okay? But are we up to it collectively? The human race. The human species, if you want to use more adequate language. The human species, are we up to it? Mankind in general. Do we have what it takes in our minds to bring about a peaceful solution to what's going on right now? I think we better. I think we better, and we better do it soon. I'm telling you. Some people might think I'm being an alarmist here. I'm a positive guy, okay? I've learned to become very much more positive than I used to be. Okay? But I see things that are going on right now. Okay? And with the weaponry that we have now, we better get talking about peace. We better do something. And it's through a cooperative lens that we will succeed. Okay? Through a cooperative lens that we will succeed. So I'll let you go. Like I said, I'm sorry about all the blunders when I speak. I'm a bit nervous sometimes when I do these videos. I'm outside. I like filming outside. And I always find a way to correct myself. And also, I'm sorry if I repeat a lot, but I want to be understood. Sometimes if you say something just once, the person listening to you or the people listening to you might not catch what you meant. So I repeat it. I repeat it slowly and clearly 2, 3, and 4 times sometimes. Usually 2 to 3, but sometimes even 4 times. I repeat to be understood. Okay? Because I could be using terms sometimes that are unfamiliar to some people. Familiar to others though, but some people might find them a bit harder to understand. So that's why I elaborate. Okay? Anyway, I'll let you go. Alright? Hopefully we're going into a period of good times. Okay? Because we still are up to a certain point in a period of good times. Okay? Hopefully we're going to a period of very good times, that we'll be able to work together cooperatively to bring about good times. Alright? Have a good day. Thank you.